The first time my mother-in-law told people I was just someone who bakes, it was at a funeral. Not quietly, not awkwardly. She said it into a microphone, smiling, while I stood 3 rows back holding a tray of pastries I had made at 4 that morning because she asked me to. Before I tell you what that moment led to, do me a favor. If stories about family drama, betrayal, and slow, controlled revenge resonate with you, like the video, subscribe, and tell me where you're watching from. Now let me tell you how a baker became invisible inside her own marriage. My name is Emma Collins. I was 31 when everything finally broke. I married Daniel Wright 5 years earlier, on a humid August afternoon in Asheville, North Carolina. Daniel was kind in the way quiet men often are. Non-confrontational, thoughtful. He worked as a civil engineer, steady income, predictable hours. When we met, he loved that I baked, said it grounded him, said my hands always smelled like sugar and warmth. What he didn't understand was that baking wasn't a hobby for me. It was a profession I'd built from nothing. By 28, I was a certified pastry chef. I ran a licensed home bakery called Blue Finch Bakes, specializing in sourdough, laminated doughs, and small batch desserts. I averaged 58 custom orders a month. Wedding cakes, restaurant contracts, holiday pop-ups. In my best year, I cleared $84,000 before taxes. None of that mattered to Daniel's family. His mother, Patricia Wright, was a retired real estate broker. Tall, polished, and permanently dissatisfied. His father, Robert Wright, had passed 2 years before I met Daniel, leaving behind a large house, a complicated trust, and a family culture built on appearances. Daniel's older sister, Lauren Wright, married rich at 26 and never let anyone forget it. To them, I wasn't a business owner. I was the girl who brought bread. It started small. Patricia would ask me to help out at family events. Just desserts, just rolls, just something homemade so we didn't look cheap. She'd introduce Lauren as our successful daughter and Daniel as the engineer, then gesture vaguely at me. And this is Emma. She likes baking. Likes. At first, I corrected her gently. Then, less gently. Eventually, I stopped. Because every time I spoke up, Daniel would squeeze my hand under the table and whisper, "She doesn't mean anything by it." What he meant was, "Please don't make this uncomfortable." The first real fracture came the winter Daniel's grandmother, Eleanor Wright, got sick. Eleanor was sharp, observant. She liked me immediately. "You measure twice before you cut," she once said, watching me portion dough in her kitchen. That's not a hobby. That's discipline. When Eleanor's health declined, Patricia took control. Medical decisions, care schedules, finances. I baked every week and drove 2 hours to deliver fresh bread to Eleanor because hospital food made her miserable. She squeezed my hand and told me stories about the house, the land, the business Robert had started decades ago. "Things will change when I'm gone," she said once, quietly. Not everyone deserves what they're expecting. I didn't ask what she meant. The night Eleanor passed, Patricia called Daniel, not me. She asked if I could handle food for the memorial reception. I baked for 3 days straight. Sourdough loaves, lemon tarts, almond croissants. Everything labeled, everything perfect. At the service, Patricia thanked Lauren publicly for organizing logistics. She thanked Daniel for being strong. Then she gestured at the dessert table. "And of course, Emma helped with the baking," she said, chuckling. "She enjoys that sort of thing." People smiled politely. I stood there, heat rising behind my eyes, realizing something simple and devastating. They didn't see me as family. They saw me as a resource. After the funeral, things escalated quickly. Patricia moved into Eleanor's house temporarily. Lauren started discussing renovations. Daniel was quiet. Too quiet. One evening, I overheard Patricia on speakerphone in our kitchen. "We'll need to adjust expectations," she said. "Daniel understands. Emma doesn't need to be involved in financial discussions. She wouldn't follow them anyway." I was standing 10 feet away, hands dusted with flour. Daniel said nothing. That was the night I stopped baking for them. Not dramatically. I just didn't answer texts asking for a few things. I stopped bringing food unprompted. I focused on my clients, on my numbers, on growth. 2 months later, Daniel came home with paperwork. "They're restructuring the family trust," he said carefully, setting the folder on the counter. Just standard stuff. Am I included? I asked. He hesitated. They said it's bloodline only. I nodded. Slowly. Did you agree with that? I asked. He looked away. That answer told me everything. The breaking point came in April. Patricia hosted a large Easter gathering at Eleanor's house. She invited extended family, church friends, business associates. Lauren asked me, via text, if I could make desserts as a gift. I didn't respond. The next day, Patricia called. Her voice was sharp, controlled. This family supports each other, she said. You're being difficult. I run a business, I replied. I don't work for free. She laughed. Let's not exaggerate. It's baking. Something inside me went cold. I won't be there, I said. Enjoy Easter. The silence on the line was thick. You're embarrassing Daniel, she said finally. No, I replied. You're just not benefiting anymore. She hung up. What I didn't know then was that Easter wasn't just a holiday. It was the day Patricia planned to announce something that would change everything. Something involving the house, the trust, and a decision made without me. A decision that assumed I'd stay quiet. They were wrong. And the next time they underestimated a baker, it would cost them far more than dessert. I found out about the announcement by accident. 3 days after Easter, Daniel left his laptop open on the kitchen counter while he took a call in the bedroom. I wasn't snooping. I was wiping flour off the surface because I'd been testing a new brioche formula, and butter gets everywhere if you let it. An email notification slid down the screen. Subject: Talking points for Sunday. Sender: Lauren Wright. I didn't open it at first. I stared at the subject line, at the familiar tightening in my chest, the one that came whenever plans were being made without me. Then another notification popped up. Same thread. Patricia Wright. Make sure Daniel understands this is already decided. Already decided. I dried my hands and opened the email. It wasn't long. Bullet points. Clean, efficient. Eleanor's house would be transferred into a family LLC. Lauren and Patricia listed as managing members. Daniel named a silent partner. No mention of me. No spousal consideration clause. No occupancy rights. At the bottom, one line stood out. Emma does not need to be present. This is family only. I felt something settle behind my ribs. Not anger. Not surprise. Clarity. When Daniel came back into the kitchen, I closed the laptop and went back to kneading dough. My movements were steady, controlled. Everything okay? He asked. Yes, I said. That night, I didn't bring it up. I watched him talk about work, about traffic, about nothing. I'd spent years listening carefully. This time, I listened for what he wasn't saying. 2 days later, I called my accountant, Maria Lopez, a no-nonsense CPA who had helped me formalize Bluefinch Bakes when I outgrew cottage laws. I need to separate some things, I told her, fully. She didn't ask why. She just asked when. By the end of the week, I had a new business account, updated contracts, a revised operating agreement. Everything clean. I also called a lawyer, not a divorce lawyer. Not yet. Her name was Allison Grant, a business attorney in Charlotte who specialized in family-owned enterprises and the messes they create. I don't think they realize I'm an asset, I told her during our first call. She paused. Most people don't, until it's gone. I told her everything. The trust, the house, the assumptions, the way my labor had been absorbed and erased. She listened quietly. Here's the thing, Allison said. You've been operating as unpaid support inside a structure that benefits from your silence. That's not illegal, but it's exploitable. What do I do? I asked. You stop being invisible, she said, and you document everything. That Sunday, Daniel went to Eleanor's house alone. I stayed home and baked. Not for them, for myself. I tested recipes, adjusted hydration, logged results. I confirmed a contract with a boutique hotel for weekly pastry delivery. $3,600 a month, guaranteed, starting in May. While I worked, my phone buzzed. Daniel, we're still here. It's running long. I replied, take your time. 2 hours later, he came home. He didn't take his shoes off. They're moving Grandma's house into an LLC, he said, standing in the doorway like a guest. Mom and Lauren will manage it. I nodded. I know, he blinked. How? I read, I said. He sighed. It's not personal. I looked at him then. Really looked. They said I didn't need to be present, I said. Did you disagree? He rubbed his face. They're just trying to protect assets. From me? No, he said quickly. From complications. I let that word sit between us. Complications, I repeated. He didn't answer. That night, I slept in the guest room, not out of spite, out of necessity, because something had shifted, and I needed space to hear myself think. Over the next few weeks, the pattern became obvious. Lauren texted Daniel about renovations. Patricia emailed him documents. Meetings were scheduled during hours I worked. Decisions were framed as fait accompli. I was informed, not consulted. And every time I raised a concern, Daniel's response was the same. They mean well. What he meant was, please don't make this harder for me. Meanwhile, Blue Finch Bakes was thriving. I hired a part-time assistant, Nora Kim, a culinary student with sharp instincts and steady hands. We expanded production. I raised prices. No one complained. In early May, I received an email from Patricia. Subject: Mother's Day. She wanted brunch pastries for 40 people at Eleanor's house. She ended the email with, "It would mean a lot to Daniel." I forwarded the email to Daniel and replied to Patricia directly. My rate is attached. Payment due upfront. She didn't respond. Daniel did. You couldn't just do this one thing? He asked, frustration cracking his voice. I do things, I said calmly. I don't give them away anymore. He stared at me like I'd changed languages. You're making this about money, he said. No, I replied. You're making my work invisible. Mother's Day came and went without my pastries. Patricia ordered catering from a local bakery instead. One I knew well. The owner, a woman named Grace Holloway, called me later that week. Your mother-in-law wasn't happy, she said gently. She complained about the price, said she was used to family help. I laughed once. So was I. Grace paused. You know, she asked if you'd sold me your recipes. That was the first time I felt it. Not anger. Threat. I called Allison that afternoon. They're shopping around, I said. And they think my work is communal property. Allison was quiet for a moment. Then it's time to draw lines they can't step over, she said. The next weekend, Daniel told me they were planning a formal signing event for the LLC. Photos, toasts, extended family invited. They didn't ask if you're coming, he added. I set down the mixing bowl. When is it? I asked. June 3rd. I nodded slowly, because June 3rd wasn't just a date. It was the day they planned to finalize a structure that erased me. What they didn't know was that while they were reorganizing inherited wealth, I was building something entirely my own. And by the time they realized the baker they dismissed had leverage, the paperwork would already be signed, just not the way they expected. I marked June 3rd on my calendar with a small dot. No note, no emotion attached, just a point in time. The weeks leading up to it were quiet in a way that felt deliberate. Daniel stopped mentioning his family unless I asked. Patricia didn't contact me at all. Lauren's name surfaced only in passing, usually followed by a vague, "They're handling it." Handling it. Another word that meant excluding me politely. I let them. Instead, I focused on expansion. Blue Finch Bakes had outgrown my home kitchen faster than I'd expected. The hotel contract alone doubled my weekly production. Nora Kim came in 4 mornings a week now, and we were still running behind. On May 12th, I signed a short-term lease on a shared commercial kitchen in downtown Asheville. 1,200 square feet, 2 convection ovens, proofing cabinets, a walk-in fridge that actually held temperature. The first morning I unlocked the door, I stood there for a full minute, breathing in the smell of stainless steel and bleach. Clean starts always smell like that. I registered Blue Finch Bakes as an LLC that afternoon. Sole owner. That detail mattered. The next call I made was to the bank, my name only. When Daniel found out, it wasn't because I told him. It was because a package arrived, addressed to Blue Finch Bakes LLC. What's this? He asked, holding the box. New packaging, I said. We're scaling. You didn't mention a new kitchen. You didn't mention the LLC, I replied. He frowned. That's different. No, I said calmly. It's parallel. That night, we argued for the first time in months. Not loudly, not emotionally. It was worse than that. You're shutting me out, Daniel said, standing in the doorway. I'm building something, I replied. You're just not part of every decision. That's not how marriage works. Neither is erasure, I said. He stared at me like he was seeing me for the first time, or realizing he hadn't. The next morning, Patricia called. Not me. Daniel. I heard her voice through the bedroom door, sharp and insistent. "Why is Emma registering businesses?" she demanded. "Is she planning something?" Daniel tried to calm her down. "She's just formalizing what she already does." "She's being secretive," Patricia snapped. "That's not appropriate." I didn't interrupt. But I did email Allison Grant that afternoon. Subject, June 3rd. We met the following day. I laid everything out. The trust, the LLC signing, the house, the assumption that my labor and presence were optional. Allison listened, then slid a legal pad across the table. "Here's what they're doing," she said. "They're consolidating assets to limit exposure, and they're excluding you because you're an unknown variable. I'm married to their son." "Yes," she said, "but you're also independent. That scares people who prefer control." "What can I do?" I asked. "You can protect yourself," she said, "and you can stop providing free value." I exhaled slowly. "I've already stopped that." "Good," she said. "Now we formalize it." She drafted a postnuptial agreement proposal that afternoon. Nothing aggressive, just clear. Separation of business assets. No implied ownership. No automatic claims. I took it home and placed it on the counter between us. Daniel read it twice. "You think I'd take from you?" he asked. "I think your family would," I replied. "And I think you wouldn't stop them." He didn't argue. That was answer enough. 2 days later, Lauren texted me for the first time in months. "Lauren Wright, Mom says you're not coming to the signing. Is that true?" I replied, "I wasn't invited." She waited a full hour before responding. "It's just paperwork. You wouldn't be interested." I stared at the message, then typed slowly. "Emma Collins. I run a business. I read contracts for a living." No response. The next week, something unexpected happened. A woman named Marjorie Klein emailed Bluefinch Bakes through the website. She introduced herself as a regional coordinator for a national lifestyle magazine. "She tasted my pastries at the hotel. They mentioned you do custom work," she wrote. "We're planning a feature on women-owned food businesses in the Southeast." We spoke on the phone that afternoon. She asked about my background, my training, my approach to baking. I told her the truth. That baking taught me patience, precision, timing, that if you rush fermentation, the structure collapses later. She laughed softly. "That's a good metaphor." The feature would run online first, then print. Publication date, June 5th, 2 days after the LLC signing. I didn't tell anyone in Daniel's family. I didn't need to. June arrived quietly. On June 2nd, Patricia sent a group text reminding everyone about the signing and brunch afterward. She added, "We'll have catering handled." I smiled at that. The morning of June 3rd, Daniel put on a suit. I put on an apron. "Are you sure you don't want to come?" he asked, standing at the door. "No," I said. "I have work." He hesitated. "This feels like a line." "It is," I replied. "I just didn't draw it out loud." He left. I went to the kitchen. At 10:30, my phone buzzed. "Nora, the magazine lady just showed up early." I wiped my hands and walked out to greet Marjorie Klein. She smiled warmly, notebook in hand. "Emma Collins?" she asked. "Yes." She looked around the kitchen, impressed. "Let's talk," she said. And as cameras clicked and questions were asked, somewhere across town, documents were being signed that assumed I was small, silent, and irrelevant. By the time they finished brunch, the story of who I was already changing. They just didn't know it yet, but they would very soon. The feature went live at 8:30 in the morning. I didn't know the exact time because I wasn't waiting for it. I was elbow deep in dough, showing Nora how to feel the difference between elasticity and resistance, when my phone started vibrating non-stop on the prep table. I ignored it until the third call came in from an unknown number. "Emma Collins?" a woman asked breathlessly when I answered. "Yes." "This is Caroline Myers from the Asheville Citizen-Times. We just saw the Bluefinch Bakes feature. Do you have a moment?" I looked at Nora, who was pretending not to listen, but very clearly was. "Yes," I said. "I have 10. By noon, the article had been shared hundreds of times. By 3, my inbox was full. Restaurant owners, event planners, a regional grocery chain asking about wholesale. At 4:17, Daniel walked into the kitchen. He didn't knock. He stood just inside the door, suit jacket still on, tie loosened, face pale in a way I'd never seen before. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked. I kept working. "Tell you what?" "This," he said, holding up his phone. "All of this." I glanced at the screen. The headline was clean and sharp. "From home kitchen to commercial success. The woman behind Bluefinch Bakes." "I didn't think it was relevant to your family meeting," I said. His jaw tightened. "They're furious." I stopped what I was doing then. Slowly. Intentionally. "They signed the papers," he continued. "Mom called it a celebration brunch. Then Lauren pulled up the article, in front of everyone." I waited. "She said," he swallowed. "She said they had no idea you were this." I wiped my hands and faced him. "This," I repeated. "A business owner," he said quietly. "A professional. Someone people care about." I studied his face, the conflict there, the dawning realization. "You've always known that," I said. "You just didn't defend it." He looked away. "What exactly did Patricia say?" I asked. He hesitated. "She said," he sighed, "that you embarrassed her, that you made the family look foolish." I nodded. "Good." He looked up sharply. "Emma, they built a plan that required me to stay small," I said. "The fact that I didn't isn't an accident." Daniel ran a hand through his hair. "Lauren thinks you did this on purpose. The timing." "I did," I said calmly. "I didn't hide it." Silence stretched between us. "You chose not to invite me," I continued. "You chose to sign things without me. You chose not to ask what I was building. This is just the part where my choices become visible." He sank into a chair. "Mom wants to talk to you," he said. I shook my head. "No. She says this affects the family." "It affects the story they tell about the family," I corrected. "That's different." That evening, Patricia called me directly for the first time in months. I let it go to voicemail. Her message was tight, controlled, clipped. "Emma, this is inappropriate. You should have told us what you were doing. This reflects on all of us. We need to discuss boundaries." I deleted it. Boundaries were exactly what I was building. The next morning, Lauren emailed me. Not a text, not a call. An email. "Emma, I don't know what you're trying to prove, but blindsiding everyone like this was unnecessary. You've made things awkward, and Mom is humiliated. If you want to be part of this family, you need to stop acting independently and start communicating." I read it twice, then forwarded it to Allison Grant. Her response came 10 minutes later. "This is excellent documentation. Do not respond." I didn't. 2 days later, something else happened. Grace Holloway, the bakery owner Patricia had used for Easter, called me. "I wanted you to hear it from me," she said. "Patricia came in yesterday, asked if I'd consider buying your business." I laughed softly. "Buying?" "Yes. She said you might be overwhelmed and looking for an exit." I felt that cold clarity again. "What did you say?" I asked. "I told her no," Grace replied, "and that if she wanted to understand baking, she should start by respecting bakers." I thanked her and hung up. That afternoon, I sat down with Maria Lopez and ran numbers. If I accepted 2 of the new contracts and expanded production hours, Bluefinch Bakes could clear $120,000 by year's end. If I didn't, if I stayed small, I'd still be treated like help. That night, Daniel tried again. "They're talking about revising the LLC," he said. "Adding you in some capacity. Symbolically." I looked at him. "Symbolism is cheap," I said. "What did you say?" He hesitated. I told them it was complicated. I nodded. "It is." I handed him a folder. Inside was the post-nuptial agreement Allison had finalized. "I need you to read this," I said. Carefully. His eyes widened. "You think this is where we are?" "I think this is where we've been," I replied. "I just stopped pretending." He didn't sign it that night. He slept on the couch. The next week, the magazine feature was picked up by a national food blog. My name appeared in places Patricia could never control. At the same time, Lauren's renovation plans stalled. Contractors backed out. Permits were delayed. Money moved slower than expected. I heard about it secondhand. From Jenna Wright, Daniel's cousin, who stopped by the kitchen one afternoon under the pretense of ordering pastries. "They didn't think you mattered," she said quietly, watching me pipe cream. "That was their mistake." I smiled faintly. "I know." On June 21st, Patricia sent one final message. "We need to clear the air before this goes any further." I stared at the screen for a long moment. Then I typed back, "I'm not air. I don't need clearing." That night, Daniel finally signed the agreement. He didn't apologize. But he didn't argue either. Something had shifted. And for the first time since I married into the right family, I wasn't reacting. I was setting the temperature, and they were starting to realize they'd underestimated the quiet science of baking. Because when heat rises too fast, structure fails, and the collapse was coming. The first legal letter arrived on a Wednesday. It wasn't dramatic. No threats, no accusations, just polite language wrapped around entitlement. Patricia Wright's attorney, a man named Thomas Keller from a firm in Raleigh, requested a meeting to clarify misunderstandings regarding Bluefinch Bake's branding and intellectual property. I read the letter twice, then once more out loud. Branding. Intellectual property. I forwarded it to Allison Grant with a single line. They think my work belongs to them. Allison called within 5 minutes. They're testing boundaries, she said, seeing if you'll shrink. I won't, I replied. I know, she said. That's why they're nervous. We drafted a response that afternoon. Firm. Calm, precise. Bluefinch Bakes was solely owned by me. All recipes, branding, and processes were proprietary. Any implication otherwise was incorrect. No meeting necessary. When Daniel found out, he looked exhausted. They're spiraling, he said. Lauren thinks you're trying to take something from them. I'm protecting what's mine, I replied. They're the ones reaching. He sat down heavily. Mom keeps saying you've changed. I smiled faintly. I stopped compensating. That weekend, something unexpected happened. A woman named Ruth Caldwell walked into the kitchen. She was in her late 60s, impeccably dressed, with the kind of posture that came from decades of being listened to. She introduced herself as the chair of a regional culinary foundation. I read about you, she said, and I tasted your rye at the hotel. I poured her coffee and listened. She told me about the foundation's annual gala, high-profile donors, media coverage, a silent auction, and a plated dessert course prepared by a featured baker. We'd like you to be that baker this year, she said. I didn't answer immediately. Is there a conflict? She asked. No, I said. Just history. I agreed. The gala was scheduled for mid-September. Patricia found out through the grapevine. She called Daniel in a fury. She's leveraging family connections, Patricia snapped. This is exactly why she shouldn't be involved. Daniel didn't repeat the words, but I could hear them anyway. Leveraging. Involved. They still thought proximity gave them ownership. The gala announcement went public 2 weeks later. My name was printed on the invitation. Featured pastry chef Emma Collins, Bluefinch Bakes. That same week, Lauren showed up at my kitchen. No warning, no apology. She stood in the doorway like she owned the space. I need to talk, she said. I didn't stop working. About what? I asked. She crossed her arms. This whole situation. Be specific, I said. She hesitated. Mom is under a lot of stress. I nodded. That's unfortunate. She feels like you're attacking the family. I looked up then. By succeeding? Lauren's jaw tightened. By refusing to stay in your lane. I wiped my hands and faced her fully. My lane is the one I built, I said. You just didn't notice until traffic picked up. Her eyes flicked around the kitchen. The equipment, the staff, the quiet efficiency. You don't have to do this, she said, softer now. We could help you. Expand. Invest. I laughed once. You want equity, I said, not partnership. She flushed. You think you're better than us now? No, I replied. I think I was never beneath you. Silence fell. You should leave, I said calmly. This is a production space. She stared at me for a long moment, then turned and walked out. That night, Daniel didn't come home until late. They're talking about the house, he said quietly. About whether we should still be living there. Eleanor's house. The one Patricia had claimed temporarily. I looked at him. What do you want? He hesitated. I don't know anymore. That answer hurt more than anything else he could have said. The next morning, I called Allison again. I want to understand my exposure, I said. Worst case. She didn't sugarcoat it. If they decide to push, they'll try to paint you as opportunistic, she said, as someone who married in and took advantage. And if they do, then we counter with documentation, she replied. Receipts, timelines, proof of independence. I already had that. Years of invoices, contracts, tax filings. I've been building a paper trail without realizing it. On July 10th, the foundation hosted a preview dinner for donors. I baked all night, plated desserts for 60 people. Perfect lines, balanced sweetness, controlled heat. As I worked, I realized something. Baking had taught me everything I needed to survive this. Patience, precision, the ability to wait while reactions finished unfolding. You don't pull bread early just because you're nervous. You trust the process. At the dinner, Ruth Caldwell introduced me personally. This woman built something from nothing, she said. Quietly, carefully, and without permission. Applause filled the room. Across the space, I saw Patricia. She stood near the back, stiff, lips pressed tight, eyes scanning the crowd like she'd lost control of a narrative she thought she owned. We didn't speak. We didn't need to. Because for the first time, she wasn't the one deciding who mattered. And as the applause faded, I knew the next move wouldn't be mine. It would be theirs. And desperation always reveals more than confidence ever does. Desperation arrived, disguised as reconciliation. Patricia Wright invited us to dinner the following Sunday. Not a casual meal, a formal one. Linen napkins, candles, the good china Eleanor had only used for holidays and funerals. Daniel read the text twice before showing it to me. She says she wants to reset, he said carefully. I nodded. People only reset when the system stops working. He didn't argue. We arrived at the house just after 6. The front door was open, music playing softly inside. Patricia stood in the entryway like a hostess, welcoming donors, not family. Emma, she said, smiling too widely. You look well. I am, I replied. Lauren was already seated at the table. She didn't stand, just watched me with a look I couldn't quite place. Not anger, calculation. Dinner was polite, painfully so. Patricia asked about the weather, about traffic, about Daniel's job. She asked me nothing until dessert, which she hadn't made. These are from a local bakery, she said, lifting the lid. Very popular lately. I recognized the box. Grace Holloway's shop. They're good, I said. She does solid work. Patricia's smile tightened. I hear you're quite busy these days, she said lightly. Articles, events. It must be overwhelming. Growth always is, I replied. Lauren set down her fork. Mom and I have been talking, she said. We think there's been a misunderstanding. I waited. We never meant to make you feel excluded, Patricia added. But family assets are complicated. Emotions can cloud judgment. Mine didn't, I said. The air shifted. Patricia leaned forward. We'd like to propose something. There it was. She slid a folder across the table toward me. Inside was a document titled Consulting Agreement. My name was spelled correctly. They'd learned that lesson, at least. This would formalize things, Patricia said. You could provide baked goods for family events, for the LLC, for partners. In exchange, we'd offer compensation and inclusion. Inclusion, I repeated. Lauren nodded. It's a way to smooth things over. Show unity. I closed the folder. You want my labor, I said. And my silence. That's not fair, Patricia said sharply. It's accurate, I replied. Daniel shifted beside me. Mom. Patricia raised a hand. Let Emma finish. I looked at her then. Really looked. You didn't want me at the signing, I said. You didn't want me in the room. Now that my name has value, you want to manage it, Lauren scoffed. You're not that important, I smiled. You came to my kitchen, I said softly. You sent lawyers. You asked another baker if she'd buy me out. Importance isn't something you decide. Silence fell heavy over the table. Patricia's voice dropped. You're married to my son. Yes, I said. Not owned by your family. She inhaled slowly. You're forcing us to protect ourselves, I nodded. That's what I've been doing all along. Dinner ended early. In the car, Daniel stared straight ahead. They're scared, he said finally. Good, I replied. That night, I received an email from Thomas Keller again. This one was different, formal, cold. It referenced Eleanor's house. Occupancy, use of space, potential conflicts of interest. They're trying to push us out, Daniel said when he read it. They're trying to isolate you, I corrected. There's a difference. The next morning, I called Ruth Caldwell. I need advice, I said. She didn't hesitate. Come by. Her office overlooked the river. Calm. Controlled. The kind of space where decisions were made without raised voices. I explained everything. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair. They underestimated you, she said. That's always dangerous. I don't want a public fight, I said. I just want autonomy, she smiled. Then you need leverage that isn't emotional. She picked up the phone and dialed someone, without asking my permission. Michael, she said, I have someone you should meet. 2 days later, I sat across from Michael Turner, a food industry investor with interests in regional brands. He'd read the article, attended the preview dinner. I don't invest in ideas, he said. I invest in operators. I showed him my numbers, my contracts, my growth plan. He nodded slowly. I'd be interested in funding a standalone location, he said. Not tied to family. Clean. My heart rate didn't change. I'm not selling control, I said. He smiled. I wouldn't ask. We talked terms, timelines, structures. Nothing was signed. But something had shifted. Again. When Daniel told Patricia I was meeting with investors, she lost control. Her voicemail was sharp, unfiltered. You are destabilizing everything, she snapped. You are risking your marriage for attention. I deleted it. That evening, Daniel sat across from me at the kitchen table. I need to ask you something, he said. Go ahead. If it comes down to it, he said carefully. Would you choose this over us? I considered the question. I'm not choosing against you, I said. I'm choosing not to disappear. He nodded slowly. I don't know if I know how to stand up to them, he admitted. That's something you'll have to decide, I said. I already did. 2 days later, a notice appeared on the door of Eleanor's house. Not eviction. Inspection. The city wanted to review permits for recent renovations. Lauren's renovations. Unapproved ones. Patricia called Daniel in a panic. Lauren's contractors had skipped steps. Cut corners. Fines were mentioned. Delays. Scrutiny. And suddenly, the family that prided itself on control was scrambling. I watched from a distance, hands steady as I shaped dough. Because when you rush a structure without respecting the foundation, it cracks. And they were finally learning what bakers know instinctively. Pressure reveals weaknesses. And once they show, there's no putting the shape back the way it was. The inspection didn't stay quiet. Within 48 hours, the city posted a notice on the front door of Eleanor's house, requiring corrective permits and a temporary halt on further renovations. Someone had complained. No one knew who. Everyone assumed it was personal. It wasn't. Contractors talk. Neighbors notice. Systems catch up eventually. Patricia called Daniel 4 times that morning. He didn't answer until the 5th. She thinks it was you, he said later, voice tight. She says you're retaliating. I looked up from my workstation, where I was laminating dough in careful layers. I don't need to touch the oven to let heat do its work, I said. He didn't respond. That afternoon, Lauren showed up again. This time, she didn't come inside. She stood outside the kitchen door, arms wrapped around herself, like she was bracing against weather that had turned suddenly cold. We need help, she said without greeting. I waited. The city is demanding documentation we don't have, she continued. Permits, architectural approvals. The trust is on edge. That sounds complicated, I said. Her jaw clenched. You know how these things work. Yes, I replied, because I follow the rules. She stepped closer. You could talk to someone. Smooth this over. With who? I asked. You have connections now, she said. People listen to you. I set down the dough scraper. You didn't want me in the room, I said calmly. You don't get to ask me to clean up a mess I didn't make, she swallowed. Mom is talking about selling the house. That's her choice, I said. Lauren's eyes flicked behind me, to the kitchen, the staff, the quiet hum of something functioning. You think you've won, she said bitterly. No, I replied. I think I'm finally not losing. She left without another word. That night, Daniel sat at the edge of the bed, staring at the floor. They're unraveling, he said. And they're blaming you. I expected that, I replied. I didn't, he admitted. I thought they were just difficult. I didn't realize how much control they needed. I watched his shoulders sag. They're asking me to choose, he said quietly. I didn't move. Between what? I asked. Between loyalty and peace, he said. I considered that. Peace doesn't ask you to betray yourself, I said. He nodded slowly. The next morning, Michael Turner called. I've seen the permit issues, he said. News travels fast. I'm not involved, I replied. I know, he said. That's why I'm calling. He wanted to move forward. Not aggressively. Strategically. A flagship location. My brand, my standards. He offered capital, mentorship, access. He also offered something else. Visibility, he said. The kind that makes it harder for people to rewrite your story. We scheduled a formal meeting. Date set, location neutral. When Patricia found out, she didn't call me. She called Ruth Caldwell. Ruth told me later, over coffee. She asked if this foundation was endorsing you, Ruth said. If we understood the family dynamics. And? I asked. Ruth smiled thinly. I told her this isn't about family. It's about competence. The following Sunday, Daniel's aunt, Margaret Wright, stopped by unannounced. She was Eleanor's sister. Older, sharper, less invested in pretense. I always liked you, Margaret said, sitting at the counter. You listen. I poured her coffee. They're afraid of you, she continued, because you don't need them. She reached across the counter and squeezed my hand. Eleanor knew, she said. She told me once that if things went the way she feared, you'd be the only one who didn't panic. That night, Daniel made his choice. Not loudly, not ceremonially. He forwarded an email to me from Thomas Keller. It outlined a revised trust structure. More restrictions, more control. A clause limiting spousal influence in family-adjacent businesses. Daniel had replied with one line. I do not agree to these terms. Patricia called immediately. Daniel didn't answer. Instead, he sat beside me at the kitchen table, phone face down. I don't know what happens next, he said. I do, I replied. They escalate. And us? He asked. I looked at him. That depends on whether you want to stand beside me or behind them, I said. Outside, rain started to fall. Slow, steady, the kind that soaks through everything eventually. And as the storm settled in, I felt something unexpected. Not fear. Relief. Because the quiet baker they dismissed had stopped absorbing pressure. And pressure, when it has nowhere to go, turns destructive. They were about to learn that. Soon. The escalation came the way Allison Grant said it would. Paperwork first, then tone. On Monday morning, a courier delivered an envelope to the kitchen. Heavy, cream-colored. Law firm letterhead embossed at the top. Thomas Keller again. This time, it wasn't polite. It alleged conflict of interest. It suggested that my growing public profile posed reputational risk to the Wright family trust. It requested that I cease using the Wright residence for any business-related discussions or storage. I read it once. Then again. Then I handed it to Daniel. They're treating you like an accessory, he said quietly. They always have, I replied. They're just saying it out loud now. Allison's response was swift and surgical, a cease and desist of her own. Clear language, citations. A reminder that I had never conducted business from the Wright residence and that any implication otherwise was inaccurate and defamatory. She ended with a line I appreciate. Any further communication should be directed to my office. The tone shifted after that. Patricia stopped pretending this was about family. She made it about control. She called Daniel's employer under the guise of concern, asking whether his wife's recent publicity could affect his role. It couldn't, but the intent was obvious. Daniel came home early that day. She crossed a line, he said. Yes, I replied, and she knows it. That evening, Michael Turner emailed to confirm the meeting. Location: a neutral office park in Charlotte. Attendees: legal counsel present. Agenda: partnership framework. I forwarded the details to Alice. She replied with one word: good. 2 days before the meeting, Lauren sent me a message. Not an email, not a call, a text. We should talk. This has gone too far. I stared at the screen for a long moment before replying. I'm available in public settings only. She didn't respond. The morning of the meeting, I wore a simple black dress and low heels. No flower, no apron, just myself. Michael Turner arrived early. So did his attorney, a woman named Dana Pierce, with sharp eyes and a calm demeanor. We talked numbers, roles, governance. I retained majority control, full creative authority. A clear exit strategy for him if needed. Nothing rushed. When we shook hands, it wasn't celebratory. It was mutual respect. Outside, as I waited for my car, I saw Patricia. She stood across the street, sunglasses on, phone in hand. She didn't approach. She didn't wave. She watched. I didn't acknowledge her. That night, Daniel and I talked longer than we had in months. They're saying you're tearing the family apart, he said. I didn't tear anything, I replied. I stepped out of the role they assigned me. He nodded slowly. I think I'm finally seeing it. The next day, Ruth Caldwell called. Word travels, she said. Patricia is telling donors that you're difficult. I laughed softly. I always was. Ruth chuckled. She asked if we'd reconsider your role at the gala. And? I told her we don't negotiate talent based on family discomfort. That afternoon, the city issued a second notice on Eleanor's house. Additional violations. Lauren called Daniel in tears. We might lose it, she said. Mom doesn't know what to do. Daniel listened, didn't promise anything. When he hung up, he looked at me. They want help again, he said. And? I asked. They want me to ask you. I met his eyes. And did you? He shook his head. No. Something loosened in my chest. That weekend, the gala committee announced the featured dessert preview online. My name was everywhere. Photos of my work. Quotes about craftsmanship, discipline, growth. Patricia stopped attending social functions. People asked questions. Stories shifted. On Sunday evening, Margaret Wright called. Patricia is furious, she said. She says you've turned everyone against her. I didn't say anything, I replied. I know, Margaret said. That's what's driving her mad. The following Tuesday, a certified letter arrived for Daniel. Patricia was requesting mediation. Formal, court-adjacent, structured. She wanted to resolve tensions before they became irreparable. Daniel looked at me, uncertain. What do you want to do? He asked. I considered it. Mediation wasn't reconciliation. It was exposure. I'll attend, I said, with counsel. The session was scheduled for the following week. Neutral office. Neutral mediator. Patricia arrived first, Lauren beside her. Both dressed impeccably. I arrived with Allison. No smiles. No greetings. The mediator outlined ground rules. Patricia spoke first. She talked about family unity, about misunderstanding, about fear of losing control. When it was my turn, I spoke calmly. I was excluded, I said, repeatedly, publicly, strategically. Patricia interrupted. You're exaggerating. Allison raised a hand. Please let my client finish, I continued. I was asked to provide labor without recognition. To stay silent while decisions affecting my life were made without me. When I stopped doing that, I was labeled difficult. Lauren scoffed. This isn't about baking, she said. It's about ego. I looked at her. No, I replied. It's about respect. Patricia leaned forward. What do you want? I didn't hesitate. I want autonomy, I said. And distance. Silence followed. The mediator blinked. Distance? Yes, I said. No involvement in family assets. No requests for my labor. No attempts to manage my public presence. And if we agree? Patricia asked tightly. Then I walk away quietly, I said, with my work intact. The room felt smaller. Patricia stared at me like she was seeing something she couldn't categorize. Not rebellion. Finality. The mediator cleared his throat. That seems reasonable. Patricia didn't respond. Lauren looked down. The session ended without agreement. But something had shifted. Again, because they'd expected negotiation. What they got was closure. And as I walked out with Allison, I realized something. The most unsettling thing for controlling people isn't confrontation. It's when you stop needing anything from them at all. The gala was 3 weeks away, and by then, the truth would be public in a way they couldn't mediate. They'd underestimated a baker's patience. They wouldn't make that mistake again. The gala arrived without drama, which in hindsight should have been the warning. No angry calls. No last-minute objections. No attempts to insert themselves. Patricia Wright went quiet. Lauren disappeared from the conversation entirely. Silence, when it comes after pressure, is never peace. It's calculation. The venue was the Biltmore Ballroom downtown, all warm wood and soft lighting, the kind of place where money speaks quietly and expects to be heard. I arrived early with Nora Kim and my team, trays secured, temperatures checked, timing planned down to the minute. This wasn't just dessert. It was proof of concept. As we plated, Ruth Caldwell moved through the room with practiced ease, greeting donors, placing hands lightly on shoulders, making people feel seen. When she reached our station, she stopped. Steady, she said softly to me. This room loves discipline. I smiled. So do I. The program began at 7. By 7:15, the room was full. Donors, board members, city officials. A judge I recognized from a zoning appeal I'd once followed out of curiosity. At my station, people ask questions. Where did you train? How long have you been baking? Do you teach? Are you expanding? I answered calmly, clearly, no exaggeration. Then I saw Patricia. She entered halfway through the first course, not with Lauren. Alone. She wore a navy dress, elegant and conservative, the kind that suggested restraint rather than attention. She didn't look at me at first. She moved through the room as if reacquainting herself with old allies. People noticed. Whispers started. I focused on my work. When Ruth introduced me formally, applause followed. Not polite. Earned. Emma Collins built Blue Finch bakes from the ground up, Ruth said. Her work reflects patience, precision, and integrity. We are honored to feature her tonight. Patricia clapped last. After dessert service, the room loosened. Conversation shifted. Wine flowed. That's when she approached. Emma, Patricia said, voice measured. Congratulations. Thank you, I replied. She gestured toward a quiet corner. May we speak? I considered it. Yes, I said, briefly. She led me a few steps away, just out of earshot. You've done well, she said. I didn't expect this level of attention. I didn't do it for attention, I replied. I did it for autonomy. Her lips pressed together. You've put us in a difficult position. I didn't put you anywhere, I said. I stepped out. She studied my face. People are asking questions. They should, I replied. Her voice dropped. Do you know what they're asking me? I waited. They're asking why Eleanor never mentioned you, she said. Why you weren't included. Why a woman with your discipline was treated like help. There it was. Not concern. Exposure. That's not my responsibility, I said. Patricia's composure cracked. Just slightly. You could clarify, she said. Help redirect. I met her eyes. Tell the truth, I said. That would redirect things quickly. Her gaze hardened. You're enjoying this, she accused. No, I replied. I'm finished with it. I turned back to my station. She didn't follow. Later that night, Daniel arrived. He hadn't planned to come. He said that himself, standing beside me as we watched the room empty. But I needed to see it, he said. See what? I asked. You, he replied. Outside the frame they put you in. He paused. I'm proud of you. It wasn't an apology. But it wasn't nothing. 2 days after the gala, the board of the foundation published donor acknowledgments. My name was listed as featured culinary partner. Patricia's name was absent. That same afternoon, Allison called. They're moving to sell Eleanor's house, she said, quietly. I thought they needed it, I replied. They need liquidity, she said, and distance from scrutiny. The sale went public a week later. Below market. Fast close. People noticed. Then something unexpected happened. The buyer backed out. Inspection issues. Unresolved permit violations. Legal ambiguity tied to the LLC. Lauren called Daniel in a panic. They're asking if Emma knows anyone, she said. Daniel didn't answer. He came home and sat across from me. I think this is where it ends, he said quietly. For them, I replied. He nodded. And us? I took a breath. We need to be honest, I said, about what this has cost. He didn't argue. We scheduled counseling. Not as a gesture, as a decision. The next morning, I received an email from Michael Turner. The lease is ready. If you want to proceed, we move now. I read it twice. Then I forwarded it to Allison with a single word. Proceed. That afternoon, Patricia sent one final message. We never wanted this outcome. I stared at it for a long moment. Then I typed back. Neither did I. But I accepted reality. She didn't reply. The new location broke ground 2 weeks later. Different city. Different neighborhood. Different expectations. As the signage went up, I stood across the street and watched strangers walk past, curious, interested, unaware of the battles that had cleared the space for something clean. I thought about all the times I've been told to be grateful, for inclusion, for tolerance, for scraps. I wasn't grateful anymore. I was deliberate. And as the doors prepared to open on something entirely mine, I knew the next chapter wouldn't be about confrontation. It would be about consequence. Because silence, once broken, doesn't go back to being harmless. And the people who depended on it were about to feel that absence in ways they couldn't explain away. The counseling sessions began in a neutral office with gray walls and a clock that ticked too loudly. The therapist's name was Helen Brooks. She was in her 50s, calm, observant, the kind of woman who didn't rush silence because she understood its weight. She asked us to describe the problem. Daniel spoke first. "My family doesn't know how to let go," he said. "And I didn't know how to stand up." I waited. When it was my turn, I didn't talk about Patricia, or Lauren, or Eleanor's house. "I learned to shrink to survive," I said. "And when I stopped, everything around me felt threatened." Helen nodded. "And what do you want now?" I didn't hesitate. "I want to live without being managed," I said. Daniel looked at me then. Really looked at me. And for the first time, I didn't soften the truth for him. Outside that room, things were moving quickly. Construction on the new location progressed on schedule. Michael Turner's team handled logistics efficiently. Permits were clean. Inspections passed on the first attempt. No shortcuts. No scrambling. The contrast wasn't lost on me. One afternoon, while reviewing floor plans, I got a call from Grace Holloway. "They came by again," she said. "Who?" I asked, though I already knew. "Patricia and Lauren," Grace replied. "They wanted to know if I'd heard anything about you, about expansion, about whether you were open to collaboration." I closed my eyes briefly. "And?" I asked. "I told them I don't discuss other women's businesses," Grace said. "And that if they wanted baked goods, they should learn to pay for them like everyone else." I thanked her. That night, Daniel told me Patricia had stopped calling. "She's telling people she's tired," he said, "that this has all been too much." "That's convenient," I replied. "She says she feels betrayed," he added. I met his eyes. "By what?" "By you not needing her," he said quietly. That was the closest he'd come to understanding it fully. A week later, the city closed the file on Eleanor's house. Too many unresolved issues. Too many irregularities. The property was officially listed as distressed. Lauren blamed contractors. Contractors blamed management. Patricia blamed timing. No one mentioned control. The same week, a letter arrived from Thomas Keller's firm. Not a threat. A withdrawal. They would no longer represent the Wright family trust in matters involving me. Allison read it and smiled faintly. "They're retreating," she said. "They know this won't go the way they want." "What happens next?" I asked. "Nothing dramatic," she replied. "They adjust. Quietly. So do you." The soft opening of the new bakery was scheduled for early November. No press, no announcements, just neighbors and friends. Ruth Caldwell attended. Grace Holloway came. Margaret Wright showed up alone and hugged me tightly. "She never understood you," Margaret said. "But Eleanor did." Daniel came later that evening. He stood near the back, watching customers, listening to compliments, seeing me in motion. When the last guests left and the doors were locked, he helped me clean. Not because I asked. Because he wanted to. "I don't know what my relationship with my family will look like now," he said, stacking chairs. "That's not my decision," I replied. "But this," he gestured around. "This is real." "Yes," I said. It always was. That night, after we closed, we sat on the curb outside, sharing a loaf that hadn't sold. Simple. Warm. Honest. No audience. No roles. Just two people choosing what to keep. The following month, the Wright family quietly moved out of the public eye. Patricia resigned from 2 boards. Lauren's renovation plans dissolved. The trust was revised again. Smaller, tighter, less ambitious. No announcements. No apologies, just consequences. And me? I woke up every morning knowing exactly where my energy went. Into dough, into systems, into people who showed up without conditions. I no longer felt the need to explain myself. The world responded accordingly. As winter settled in, the bakery filled with familiar faces. Regulars, neighbors, people who didn't ask where I came from before deciding I mattered. One evening, Helen Brooks asked me something that stayed with me. "What does peace look like now?" I thought about it. "It looks like choosing myself without guilt," I said. She smiled. "That's not revenge." "No," I agreed. "It's release." The story wasn't over yet, but it was finally mine to tell. And the last chapter wouldn't be about what I lost. It would be about what I refused to give away again. Winter changed the rhythm of everything. The bakery settled into a quieter pace. Not slower, just steadier. Fewer impulse customers, more regulars. People who came every Saturday morning. People who learned my name without asking who I belonged to. That mattered more than I expected. The first snow came early December. I was in the back, shaping dough, when Nora Kim stuck her head in. "Someone's here asking for you," she said. "They look nervous." I wiped my hands and stepped out front. It was Daniel. He wasn't wearing his work coat. Just a sweater, dusted with snow. Hands shoved into his pockets like he didn't know where to put them anymore. "I didn't want to call," he said. "I didn't know if you'd answer." I nodded toward the counter. "Sit." He did. For a moment, we just listened to the hum of the ovens. "They're selling what's left," he said finally. "The trust, not dissolving it, downsizing." I didn't react. "Mom says it's temporary," he added. "But it isn't." "No," I said. "It never is." He exhaled slowly. "She asked about you." I raised an eyebrow. "She wanted to know if you'd come for Christmas." The word hung between us. "I won't," I said calmly. "I know," he replied. "I told her that." I glanced at him then. "What did she say?" "That you've changed," he said. "That you used to be easier." I smiled faintly. "I used to be quiet." He nodded. "That's what I told her." Silence again. Then he said the thing he'd been circling for months. "I don't want to live in reaction anymore." I waited. "I'm tired of translating for them," he continued, "of smoothing things over, of asking you to absorb discomfort so they don't have to." I studied his face. The fatigue there, the clarity. "What do you want?" I asked. He didn't answer right away. "I want a marriage that isn't managed by fear," he said. "Even if that means distance. Even if it means they're angry." I leaned back against the counter. "And are you prepared for that anger?" I asked. He nodded. "I think I am." That was new. We didn't make any promises that afternoon. We didn't hug. We didn't resolve anything. But when he left, he didn't look torn anymore. A week later, Patricia sent a card. Not an email, not a text. A card. Inside, in neat handwriting, she wrote, "I hope you are well. I'm trying to understand where things went wrong. Perhaps one day we can talk." No apology, no acknowledgement. Just curiosity, framed as loss. I didn't respond. On Christmas Eve, the bakery closed early. I stayed behind, cleaning, moving slowly, letting the quiet settle. I thought about all the holidays where I'd been useful instead of welcome. All the times I'd brought food into rooms where my voice didn't follow. That chapter felt distant now. Daniel stopped by that evening. No gifts, no agenda. "I didn't go," he said simply. I knew what he meant. We sat on the floor, backs against the counter, sharing tea. "I don't know what happens next," he said. "I do," I replied. "It's slower, quieter, but real." In January, something unexpected happened. An email came from a small publishing imprint that focused on food and craft. They'd read the article, attended the gala, tasted the bread. They wanted to talk about a book. Not a memoir, a process book. Systems, patience, work. I laughed out loud when I read it. All those years of being dismissed as just someone who bakes. And now they wanted to know how I thought. I didn't say yes immediately, but I didn't say no. Patricia's name stopped coming up in conversation. Lauren moved to another city. Daniel heard it through Margaret. The house sat empty. And me? I felt something I hadn't before. Unattached. Not in a lonely way. In a free one. The baker they overlooked had outgrown the room, and I wasn't interested in returning to explain why, because the truth had settled where it belonged. Not in confrontation, but in consequence. And the final chapter wasn't about what they lost. It was about what I kept. The year ended without ceremony. No dramatic confrontations, no final arguments, just distance settling into place, like a decision that had been made long before anyone said it out loud. The bakery carried me through winter. Snow piled up along the sidewalks, the windows fogged in the mornings. People came in for warmth, for bread, for something steady they could count on. I learned their orders. They learned my schedule. We didn't ask much of each other. That felt like respect. In February, Daniel and I signed papers. Not divorce papers. Not reconciliation papers. Separation, clean and mutual. We sat across from each other in a small conference room, a notary present, both of us calm. No accusations, no bargaining. "This doesn't mean failure," he said quietly. "No," I replied. "It means honesty." He nodded. "I'm proud of you." I believed him. We hugged once, briefly, like people who cared but no longer needed to prove it. He moved closer to work. I stayed where I was. The bakery grew. Not explosively, intentionally. Wholesale accounts stabilized. Staff turnover stayed low. I promoted Nora Kim to lead baker, increased her pay, gave her real authority. She earned it. She knew it. One afternoon, a woman stood near the counter longer than necessary. She introduced herself as Caroline Myers, the journalist who had first called me months ago. "I'm doing a follow-up," she said, "about women who rebuilt quietly." I thought about that phrase, rebuilt quietly. "Yes," I said, "that feels accurate." The article ran in March. No mention of family conflict, no villains, just work, boundaries, and what happens when someone stops asking permission. Patricia Wright didn't reach out again. Lauren never did. Margaret sent a note once, short and handwritten. Eleanor would have been proud. I kept it in the office drawer. The book proposal became real by spring. Meetings, outlines, deadlines. They didn't want my pain. They wanted my process. That felt right. By summer, the second location opened. Different neighborhood, different clientele, same standards. On opening day, I arrived early, unlocked the door, and stood there alone for a moment. No one had taken this from me. No one had given it to me either. I built it. Here's the truth: I don't soften anymore. Some families don't break because of money. They break because control stops working. I wasn't rejected because I failed. I was dismissed because I succeeded without asking. Revenge was never the point. I didn't need them to lose. I needed myself to stop disappearing. If you're listening to this and you feel familiar knots in your chest, if you've ever been valued only for what you provide and not for who you are, hear this clearly. You don't owe anyone access to your labor, your silence, or your worth. You are allowed to choose yourself without announcing it. And sometimes the most powerful ending isn't confrontation. It's continuity. If this story resonated with you, take a moment to like the video, subscribe, and share your thoughts in the comments. Especially if you've ever had to step out of a role that kept you small. You're not cruel for setting boundaries. You're just done pretending. And that's where real freedom begins.